Hello. Thank you
Hello.
once again for joining us today for Pale Blooms and Beyond, another episode. Musician, songwriter, producer, Mark James Fordyce, aka Mark James, was a member of York synthpop new romantic band, The Mood, from 1981 to 1984. The members were Mark, drums, percussion, programming, synths, John Moore, vocals, guitars, and synths, and Eric James Logan, synths, piano, programming, and vocals. The band released several singles and a mini LP during their time together. And in 2008, Cherry Red Records released a comprehensive 19-track CD, The Singles Collection. Mark is currently managing director of Sugarstar, providing pre-cleared music for TV, commercials, and movies. He's also chairman and founder of York Data Services, a business ISP in North Yorkshire. Well, welcome, Mark.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me today. Well, let's see. Let's go back. I always like to go back to the beginning, brush off a few of those cobwebs. Take us back. Where were you born?
So I was born in Edinburgh,
Okay.
a long time ago.
Okay. You were actually, I just talked to David Payton from Pilot.
Right.
Yes, you guys were born not the same time, of course, but
not far away. Not far away.
Right.
Yeah. Just
right. Well, what are some recollections of your childhood?
well, I suppose I grew up in the 70s in Scotland. So born in Edinburgh, but most of my schooling was in a place called Glenrothes in Fife, which is the kingdom of Fife, as they call it, not far from the sea. And I grew up with, and still have, dyslexia. So that was a kind of a real part of shaping who I was to become at the end of the day. I found my kind of main interest in hanging out in the music room rather than in the kind of academic side of school. So anything to kind of get away from having to do maths and English and those sort of stuff. So I would levitate towards, or say gravitate towards the music room and the arts department. And I suppose that's kind of where my love came from. And again, being in Scotland around the kind of mid 70s, going towards the late 70s, there was some great music coming out of that part of the country with bands like the Skids and stuff like that, which that was my first ever gig, was going to see the Skids play.
Oh, okay.
And that kind of awoke the desire to go and do something similar myself.
Okay, I was going to ask about that. Do you recall music being played in the household early on when you were a kid?
Yeah, my parents were always, playing vinyl. They had quite an extensive vinyl collection, but it was all mainly Elvis. Apart from this one record that my mother had purchased by Tangerine Dream. And again, that was something that was probably very subconscious, and the kind of the draw towards synthesized music probably wasn't apparent back then, but the album was Rubicon, and I've still got that original LP from my mum.
Yeah.
So that was a kind of something that was pushing me in that direction, the kind of the love for synthesized music, and then in 78 and 79 along came Gary Newman onto our TV screens, and that changed kind of everything, really. So I was very interested in the whole kind of punk new wave thing that was happening. That was the kind of records I was starting to buy when I was starting to buy records myself with my own pocket money. And then obviously Gary Newman came along and took the whole kind of punk thing and spun it around and added a big fat synthesizer, and there you go. That's kind of what the awakening, as they call it.
Yeah, you're right, because I remember hearing Cars the first time, and it was very different, very, very progressive in that genre, that
Yeah.
time. Yeah, exactly. Um, so were either one of your parents musically inclined at all? Just curious.
Yeah, my dad played drums.
Okay.
He never had a kit or anything, but he played drums, the military style drums in the school band, but he was at school. So I think he was a secret kind of wannabe drummer himself. He would have seriously loved to have his own kits and play in a band. But as far as he got was just beating sticks around with a snare drum and anything else that he could tap on top of. So I grew up with my dad always drumming on tables and in the car as we drove and stuff like that. He was on a steering wheel. So when I kind of showed an interest in that side of it, he was really supportive and taking me out to buy my first kit. And over the years, he was my unofficial roadie, putting everything in the back of the car, taking me to the next gig.
Okay, I've heard that a few stories like that, where the parent was the chauffeur, the roadie. That always helps out.
Yeah.
Well, what were some of course you mentioned Gary Newman. What were some other bands and artists that you were into as a teenager?
The Pistols,
Okay.
the Skids, as I mentioned before, a band called the Ruts.
Okay, yeah.
They were kind of bands that were touring around at the time. I went to my second ever gig was going to see the Ruts in Edinburgh. And then I was kind of again, drawn towards the kind of the Gary Newman thing. Kind of changed a lot of stuff, and I started to consume what I'd describe as kind of synthesized music, I suppose, and YMO, Telex, Kraftwerk, Bowie, all the Bowie stuff in the Berlin sessions. These are the kind of things that I was really sort of starting to get into. And then the very early first incarnation of the Human League, Cabaret Voltaire. There's a lot of bands around the kind of this scene when I moved to York in Yorkshire in '79. So that was a transition period. So all this new music was coming in, and I was moving from Scotland to England to York. So I kind of landed in the kind of the middle of a growing scene that was happening. So there was lots of bands, and when we put our band together, they then started gigging. We put the mood together. There was us in York, and there was Soft Cell in Leeds, and the Human League, Heaven 17 in Sheffield, Cabaret Voltaire in Sheffield. So there was a kind of a lot happening around the region.
Yeah. You mentioned the early Human League. The song "Being Boiled."
Brilliant! Yeah, great track, really good.
There are certain songs you mishear the lyrics. I was always thinking that they were saying, "Listen to the sound of butter." B-U-T-T-R. When you're cooking or you're boiling butter,
Yeah.
And then when I realized it was Buddha, it was like, okay, that makes a little more sense.
Yeah, now it's a real groundbreaking track, and it still is. It stands up today. It's so fresh when you put it on. But amazing what they achieved with kind of so little technology.
Right, exactly. And OMD, another one that I was.
Yes, and again, OMD. That was kind of first album, Electricity, the first track off the album. Fantastic, really, really good. And that was kind of another one that kind of went in the collection.
Right. Yeah. So the Mood, was that your first band, or were you in a band prior to that?
I was in a little kind of punky type band when I first moved to York. That was a band called The End, and we didn't do any writing. We just did covers. And it was mainly we covered the Jam. So.
Okay.
And that was my first foray into playing with other musicians, and then I quickly kind of got the thirst for it and the liking for it. So and I knew that I wanted to kind of achieve something that was kind of more than just playing in a local pub. I wanted to kind of have success in music. And so getting together with John and Eric, very kind of like-minded people, it was just the right time. John was older than us, he was a kind of a seasoned musician. He had been in several bands in York over the years, and great voice, great guitarist, but he was very much traditional, guitar-driven bands he was doing, and it wasn't until myself and Eric came along. We were both into synthesized music. So we had a lot in common. Not only is Eric from Scotland, he's from Glasgow. So two Scots lads in York with the same interest in synthesizers. So it was meant to be.
with the same middle name too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that's unique. So so it was so John was he was kind of open to going in that direction. You said he was more of a traditional guitar.
Yeah, he was. I think he had been in several bands and was probably kind of fed up with not going anywhere with them. And I think he had the same, again, like-minded. Deep down, he had that same urge, as we all do, I suppose, to be in a band that's going to have a bit of success around it.
Right.
I think the formula that he had before then wasn't working, but I clearly saw the potential that he could be to fronting what would become the version of the Mood that signed to RCA.
Yeah. Well, originally there was a 5-piece.
It was, yeah, and that was the kind of remnants of John's old band.
Yeah. Okay.
And Eric himself. We came along and plonked ourselves in the middle of it like cuckoos in a nest.
Right.
And quickly changed the path and future of where it was going.
We're gonna feather this nest, right? So,
yeah.
Interesting. Well, what happened to Steve Carter and John? Why didn't they last?
I suppose natural evolution of where we were going. When we got the initial interest to sign to a major label, and that came pretty fast. There was the 5 of us still that were kind of moving forward with that deal, but Steve was a qualified mechanic, and he had a regular job with regular money coming in. He had a girlfriend that was giving him pressure not to give up his regular job with his regular money coming in. So he decided not to go forward and sign the contract. So we actually signed to RCA with a 4-piece version, and you'll see that on the first single. Is There a Reason? So John Dolby is still with the band at that point.
Okay.
But the first recording session that we did in London, so you can imagine we're this kind of local band in York that's playing around York and Leeds and the kind of surrounding area. And then suddenly we get signed to RCA, we go off to London, kind of everything changes in the terms of the expectations and pressure of standing up to that new way, I suppose, of what we're doing. And we'd recorded a bit again in local studios, but now we're in a very big studio in London with big budgets, and it didn't really work out with John. So on the first sessions, he only ended up playing bass or what would become a B-side, which is Waves in Motion.
Okay.
Instrumental. He's on. Is he on that? I think he's on that. Yeah. So he didn't cut it for the sessions that we were doing. So sadly, we had to part ways on that. That was one of those things a long time ago.
Right.
And funny, I still see John around, so there's no animosity. Yeah, he went on to do other things. So. Right.
Well, you mentioned Is There a Reason? From 81. I believe on the compilation Cherry Red, the 12-inch mix was done later, right? When it was just the 3-piece. Would that be right?
Yes, so there's a version of the original of Is There a Reason, which was done by ourselves in a studio in Hull, in Yorkshire.
Mm-hmm.
And we put it out ourselves, so that was self-funded. And that was kind of what helped us get the deal. We put that out. We started getting played in a lot of the dance clubs around the area. There was a very influential club in Leeds called the Warehouse, Leeds Warehouse, where Mark Almond used to work. He was the coat check guy on the door.
Okay.
And Dave Ball used to do the odd kind of DJing and stuff in the club, and we used to hang out there. And we got to know the main DJ, a guy called Ian Dewhurst. And there used to be in one of our national music papers called it was either Sounds or Melody Maker, I can't remember now. One of the kind of the national music papers, they used to run a futurist chart, and that was compiled by the kind of the clubs around the country that were playing futurist music, and we got really good reactions from that kind of self-financed record, and it got to number 6 in the futurist charts, and that got the attention of the majors. So
right. Well, yeah, I like the song a lot, and it's a little bit dated today, but I think it still holds up.
Yeah. And then when we signed to RCA, we then recorded it from scratch again, a brand new version, of which there was the 12-inch mix down as well as what you're talking about, and that was fun to do because again we were kind of in a kind of completely different environment, in a big studio. The studio was called SARM Studios, which was owned and run by Trevor Horn. So there's a lot of things happening. It was a really good place to be at that moment in time. It was kind of the epicenter of what was happening. When we were in recording, ABC were in mixing and doing overdubs in the Lexington Love album. Spandau Ballet were in doing Instinction. That's where the Art of Noise was born from. So I was in and around the studio when some of those sessions were going on, with the birth of the Art of Noise. So there was just a lot happening. It was a really, really good place to be, and there's a real kind of melting pot of everyone kind of throwing ideas in. So when we were in doing the 12-inch mix, we got some input from Simon Darlow from Buggles. He kind of helped us along with some of those ideas on that middle 8 section with all those arpeggiated walking synth sounds and everything. So we were being kind of introduced to all these cool new toys, which was fantastic.
Oh, well, you got to play with all those toys. Yeah. Well, it was a real vibrant time, like you said, to be there. And timing has a lot to do with everything,
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I had to show you this. The first single that I ever got was this one here.
Yes, yeah. Don't Stop.
Actually, what they called the special extended single. Yeah.
Yes, that's it.
Of Don't Stop. So that was my first foray into your music.
Wow.
And again, like you mentioned about John's voice, I think it's really strong, and I think it suits the music real well too. Especially on the choruses. That was one of those. Then not long after that, I wanted to show you here's the other one real quick. Still have the vinyl.
Yeah, very good.
The mini LP.
Yeah.
So I like all 5 tracks on here, I've got to say. But my favorite was one written by Eric. Don't Let Me Down.
Let Me Down. Yeah, it's a great track. Yeah.
Yes, it is. I've always been one. I mean, I like the upbeat, danceable tracks, but I've always been one that kind of leans a little more to the moodier songs.
Yeah.
Play on words there, moodier.
We've got some some really good unreleased stuff that we did at the time, which we will be bringing out. I mean, we're just working on some stuff at the moment.
Well, that would be good. I mean, I know a lot of fans, and there'll be a lot of interest for that as well.
Yeah. So our second record producer that we worked with was Steve Levine.
Yes.
And Steve at the time was also working with Culture Club. So in fact, when we first started working with Steve, Culture Club hadn't had a hit at that point. They had the 2 first singles, which didn't do anything. And then Do You Really Want to Hurt Me was the kind of the breakaway one for them. And I remember distinctly when it shot up the charts, they had to come in and use one of our sessions in the studio to do the backing tracks for Top of the Pops.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, again, it was a kind of a, you know, the right time, the right place, choosing the right producer, who was on a fast trajectory rise of working with some amazing people. And I've kept in touch with Steve. He's a very good friend. And the combination of the interest that we still have of the band, we're working with Steve at the moment on what will become an anniversary album, a 40+ year anniversary album.
Okay.
So it'll be all the recordings. We were in London a couple of months ago. All the tapes are now archived and looked after by Sony, which bought RCA.
Mm-hmm.
So we went down to Iron Mountain, the Sony Vault, and picked up all the masters. And they've all been transferred, digitized. I had to bake all the old tapes, transfer them to digital. And then, in fact, that's what I was doing today. I'm just been cataloging some of the tracks to then I'll go across to Steve's studio, and then he's going to remix everything, the entire catalog, all the B-sides, and they'll go into a special anniversary album.
Wow. Do you think that will be released by Cherry Red as well?
We're not sure at this moment in time. It might be, but yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be some good demand for it for sure.
Oh, I imagine so. Yeah, Cherry Red and has always been my go-to label for finding a lot of, you know, hard to find obscure music, and they're always really good about re-releasing a lot of older material.
Yeah,
like that, you know, really good. They champion a lot of artists.
they do, and they you know, they were really key in helping kind of you know, get the band's name back out there again. You know, it was great them putting the singles collection out.
Yeah. It just surprises me sometimes when I go through their website and I'll see like, oh wow, you know, you're going to release this band. I've always been looking for something, you know, on CD or whatever. You only have vinyl, you know. And your band in particular, you know, was like wow, because that's all I had was those two vinyls, and they wear pretty thin after a while and sound quality. Well, yeah. Mentioning Steve Levine. Are you familiar with John Howard? Do you know who John Howard is?
No.
Yeah, he was a little earlier generation. He had an album called Kid in a Big World.
Right.
That again, Cherry Red kind of resurfaced with them, and it was kind of one of those that was kind of gone and forgotten back in the mid 70s. Yeah.
Okay.
And they re-released that. Well, he was kind of a precursor to Culture Club. His dealings with he did a couple of early 80s singles with Steve Levine.
Right. Okay.
And he was talking about hearing Boy George. I don't know, I guess maybe they were in the studio. This is, you know, well before any Culture Club material, and hearing him sing and just wow, you know, just that voice, you know.
Yeah.
And how unique that was as well.
Yeah. Well, we spent kind of time in and around them through those sessions. What we're doing, we saw kind of go out to clubs afterwards together.
Yeah.
In fact, on Passion Dark Rooms, Roy Hay from Culture Club plays guitar on that track.
Right. Yes, you're right. Yeah. So that's always unique, and the connections that I find in doing these interviews, I think that's fascinating. Well, let me ask you this: why there was no album released in the UK?
I think we put that down to bad management.
Okay.
We had two guys that managed us right at the beginning, and they're the ones that were responsible for getting us signed. So that was great. We can't knock them for that at all. That was very, very good. But after that, they just weren't very good at maintaining the kind of momentum of it's like everything. When you sign to a label, it's just the beginning of the journey. And you've got to have your management fighting on your behalf for the next thing that comes out, and the next thing you need to do, and for the budgets you need to do them with. And they just weren't there for us. So we're kind of on our own in London when we're doing those recordings. and they never really capitalized on some of the things that we were achieving. So we're getting very good record sales. We were getting really good radio play on the major stations in the UK, and we're getting really good rotation on those. We did, we had live sessions for Radio 1 at the time, and on the main kind of breakfast shows and stuff. And but there just wasn't the kind of momentum there to see the opportunities, I suppose. For example, in Don't Stop, when it came out, it took on life of itself in America. The actual copy that you have there kind of went out to all the dance clubs, and it did really well across the States in the dance clubs. We never went to America. Absolutely crazy. We never capitalized on it. So I think there was always these kind of gaps between the records, and so we were building towards, and we had finished the UK album. It was in the can, completely finished, agreed, and then there was this initial success on the States for Don't Stop, and I think on the back of that they kind of hurriedly put out the mini LP on the back of it. And then we started working with Steve Levine. We did Passion Dark Rooms, which was the 4th single, and then we tried to change our management. So by then we're still doing a lot of stuff live in kind of the north of England mainly, and we're still playing at this club called the Warehouse. And there's a guy that ran the club called my brain's just gone there. It's
okay. That's okay. I can edit any of these. Part that we have.
Yeah, exactly on it. But at the time, so we tried to kind of look at getting new management in, and that never came to fruition. And we got a new manager, but they tried to get us away from RCA and to EMI, and that kind of never happened. We managed to then do another record at the time, which would have been about a year's gap, and that was Is There a Reason? No, not Is There a Reason. It was Need Your Love Now. Sorry. Yeah. And by then it was kind of over. The momentum had kind of gone, and the Need Your Love Now didn't do very much in record sales. So it was the name that escaped me earlier was Mike Wider, who became our manager. He was a wonderful person, really good. And Mike owned the Warehouse Club, and he helped out Soft Cell in the early days as well and stuff. So he was a real kind of character. But it was kind of it was too late by then. The momentum had gone, so it was a shame it never came out. So it never got the light of day. So it's and I've actually not here. It's in London in another place where it's been stored at the moment. But yeah, it's all finished in its entirety, and it's now been transferred across to digital now. So so there's a few things that we're planning on doing. One is this anniversary album with all the remixes that Steve's going to do. And then we're also going to remaster the original mixes and put those out as well on it, and put out the album that never came out, put that version out as well. So there'll be a lot of material coming out at the end of this year or the beginning of next year.
Okay, well, good. That sounds, I know a lot of people are excited and anxious to see that or come to fruition. Paris is one day away. Reached number 42, almost, but 2 slots from making 40. That probably would have changed a little bit. That would have changed everything. It was very ironic. We got some great radio plays and some great momentum on that track. And we were actually out in Paris at the time filming the video for it. And we got a call to say that we had gone in at 42 in the charts, and the Top of the Pops were looking at putting us on what they call the bubbling under. So they would always pick a track that was kind of on the way in, and it was always kind of 42 was the number that triggered you getting on Top of the Pops.
So we were down for that, and then we found out at that time that the World Cup was on. So they were just cutting bits from the show, and we never got included in the end. And then I always remember the following week, Thomas Dolby got to 42 with Wind Power, and he got on top of the Pops, and then the rest was, it was because I always kind of likened us to kind of similar type of sound and things, and yeah, the rest was history for him, and our moment was gone. But yeah, that's what it's about, isn't it? The luck of the draw.
Yeah, the luck of the draw, like you said, the momentum and the timing and everything.
Yeah.
They're like the stars have to align, almost.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's all got to be the same, isn't it? Coming together, and no one thing can carry you forward. It's got to be many things.
Right. Well, I wanted to hear about this. You guys did appear on the children's program Razzmatazz.
That's right. Yeah.
You played Don't Stop. How was that experience? Do you remember that?
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah, it was. It was challenging with a studio full of kids all around you who wanted to grab and pull the wires and hit the drums and play the keyboards, and so yeah, it was funny, but very enjoyable. It was good. Yeah.
So it was live. It was live.
So it was miming. Yeah, all TV shows back then were miming on it, so it was yeah.
Yeah, I talked to one guy a while back, and he said, you remember the theaters that would have like the matinees on Sundays or on the weekends, and they would play like westerns and things like that, old. And in between a show, I think it might have been the Lone Ranger, they were showing reruns. They got to play in between, and they said it was just like screaming kids out there, like throwing food and throwing everything, and it was. He said, but he said that was how one of their earliest gigs, how they got their start. You got to start somewhere.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and it was a really good show. There's a lot of bands at the moment were on that show, so it was. We were on the same show as Gary Newman, I remember rightly.
Okay, I was going to ask you about any memorable live shows, live gigs that you played.
Yeah, we did a lot in the beginning, and we would play with bands like B Movie. It's another band from the 80s that were kind of around at the time. We did gigs with them. We played with Soft Cell. We did an early gig with Depeche Mode, who supported us in Leeds. So yeah, that was good, because watching them soundcheck, I remember it like it was yesterday. You knew they were going to be massive. It was so infectious, the sounds. Yeah, so that was a kind of very memorable moment. I've seen them sort of setting up, and back then it was before they had the reel-to-reel as a backing track. They had it on a cassette machine, like a ghetto blaster that they had at the back of the stage, and that was the rhythms were on that. That's before they progressed to using a reel-to-reel. So they kind of turned up and with their synths on little stands and beer crates, and plugged this cassette machine in. And then it all sprang to life, and you thought, "Wow, that's yeah, very infectious."
That was after Vince Clarke left, right?
Before.
Oh, before. Okay.
It was the original lineup, yeah, right at the beginning, yeah. So that's when they were promoting their first ever single, which I think was it New Life, was it? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned B Movie. I have a written interview site. And it's kind of been fallen by the wayside a little bit. I need to do some more of those, but I prefer the video interviews. So I've been focusing more on this.
Right.
Go back to do a few of those. Some people prefer to do that, over the video. Anyway, I did one a few years ago with Steve Hovington. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. He was
great band, really good band. Yeah.
Yeah. Nowhere Girl. I remember that when I still have that on vinyl.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course, they're still out there playing live.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. I commend you guys, people that are still, soldiering on after all this time too, doing that as well. Yeah, I used to, you were talking about some of the clubs early on with the DJs and stuff. I used to DJ back in the mid '80s here in
Okay.
Texas. And Don't Stop and Passion in Dark Rooms were, pretty regular rotation. I
Mm,
used to get those on, and it was always, filled the dance floor. And,
yeah. Oh,
so
well, thank you for
people were,
playing them at that time. Yeah.
I did my little part, right?
Yeah.
From,
Absolutely.
well, the final single, 1984 is I Don't Need Your Love Now.
Yeah.
Um, Kind of your swan song, I guess, in a
Mm.
way. Any memories on recording that one?
Yeah, it was. So I suppose if you look at the timeline of the recording session, so the first batch was, as I was saying before, was done at SARM Studios, which was the kind of place to be at the time, and very lucky to kind of be there at that time. And we recorded, well, the first session we recorded Is There a Reason? What was the other one that went with it? I think it was No One Left to Blame, Watching Time, and Waves of Motion. I think we did in those sessions, the first lot. And that was that was summer of '81. And then we went back in and did Paris is One Day Away, Don't Stop. And that would have been kind of like run in the autumn period of '81 again. And then we moved producers, because the first producer was a guy called Anthony Forrest that did those first singles with us. And then we moved across with Steve Levine to Red Bus Studios.
Okay.
And again, there were great sessions, because we were in studio studio 1, and I think in studio 2 at the time, in the weeks that we were there. Again, Spandau Ballet were in doing some overdubs on True. Then Imagination were in doing various tracks with Joy and Swain, their producers. So it was a kind of good sessions for those, and they were both in London, right, kind of in the heart of London. So so you'd kind of do your recordings during the day and sort of into the evening, and then you would kind of go out and you would go to kind of some of the legendary clubs around London at the time. So it was a real exciting scene to be kind of part of. So not just the recording, but everything around it. And then when we came to do the last lot of sessions, we changed producers again with a guy called Paul Cobalt. And that was in Rockfield Studios in Wales. And of course, Rockfield is very famous for where Bohemian Rhapsody was done, that famous Queen album, right up to kind of more modern stuff with Oasis, the big famous first Oasis album, Wonderwall, and everything was all done at Rockfield. So it's a real studio with history, and it was a residential studio. So it was in the kind of countryside in Wales, and you went and lived and stayed there. So keep you out of mischief.
Right.
So a real kind of different feel for the whole thing on it. So it was very, yeah. I mean, it was fun doing, but not as much fun as when we're in London.
Right. That's interesting. There's some interesting stories there at Rockfield as well.
Yeah, it was a bizarre place, because it was kind of in Wales, kind of away from everywhere else, but there seemed to be a whole kind of community around the studio. So you would stumble across musicians wherever you went, and if you went down to I remember one afternoon we went to the local butchers to just to get something to eat for that evening, and we're in the queue. This car pulls outside the butchers. There's this guy and a really beautiful lady get out. It was a Jeep. And come in to the butchers, stand behind us in the queue, and the guy turns around and he goes, "You guys must be recording at Rockfield." And I said, "Oh yeah, we are." I think we stood out, like a sore thumb in a country, little country place, And anyway, it turned out that the guy was Robert Plant, and he came down and watched us doing one of the sessions at Rockfield. So it was one of those kind of bizarre things. But there you go.
Yeah,
it was fun.
Yeah, exactly. The people that you would run into. I always like to hear those kind of stories too. What you talked about before with Spandau Ballet, and recording there, the other studio, and then running into them like in the hallways and passing. I like to hear those kind of stories.
Yeah, it was there was it was funny because when you read some stories, you hear these versions of kind of bands battling against each other and stuff, but you'd go out into clubs and everyone would be chatting away together, and we would end up at a club and see Spandau across at the other bar, and you walk across and you have a chat with them, and they're really gracious, and we chat about different things, and you would get people involved in sessions. So when we're doing stuff at SARM, we had a guy called Andy Pask, who was the bass player in a band called Landscape.
Yes.
And he ended up playing on 3 of our tracks. So he's on Don't Stop, he's on Paris is One Day Away, I think was he on his, I think he's on Is There a Reason as well, actually. Yeah.
Landscape, Einstein a Go-Go is
that's
the one.
right, yeah. I know. Yeah. Because again, this is the bizarre coincidence of life. When I go back to when I was in Scotland, and I was just kind of looking at what I should be doing, and I was getting interested in drums. My dad took me to a drum clinic at a local music store in Fife. And the guy that was taking the drum clinic was a guy called Richard James Burgess.
Yeah.
And he was just a young drummer. He was endorsed by Pearl, I think, at the time, and so he was doing this clinic. And I got to chat with him afterwards. He let me sit down and play his kit, and showed me a little kind of rudiments, and that was the first thing I really did as a drummer. He taught me my first kind of beat on his kit, and then you fast forward to several years later. I'm now signed to RCA Records. I'm in a studio in London, and who'd I bump into but Richard James Burgess, who was at the time obviously producing Spandau Ballet.
Right.
And he had also he had co-invented the Simmons drum kit with Dave Simmons. And one of the prototypes of the kit was in SARM at the time, and that's the kit that I play on Paris One Day Away and Don't Stop. So that was Richard's early prototype of the Simmons kit. And then once it came out, I bought my own kit from there. I had a black Simmons, the SDS5, which is a game changer. Kind of changed everything really for the music industry at the time. I mean, that was the sound that everyone wanted, and we were kind of, again, being in the right place at the right time. We were very early adopters, and I think I must have been one of the first 10 drummers in the UK to own a Simmons when they first came out.
Okay. Well, was it a fairly easy transition for you to move from the drumming into the programming, the computer programming?
Yeah, it was. I just was drawn to technology. I just loved it. I was fascinated by the kind of the flashing lights and things that things could do, and drum machines and synthesizers, and again, being in a place like SARM, because there was so much going on, it had the best toys there was. So there was a huge amount of things to play with. So often I would stay back after we finished doing our sessions, and the rest of the guys, John and Eric, would go to the pub. I would stay back at the studio and just nosing around and see if I could sit in other people's sessions. Like I said, I was sitting around when a lot of the early Art of Noise stuff was first being put together, because Gary Langan was our engineer, who then obviously was in the Art of Noise, and Julian Medlinson was our engineer as well. So these guys were really kind of groundbreaking what they were doing. So I got to play with the toys, which was fantastic, and it kind of grew from there. And as you can see, I've got a lot of original analog.
Yeah.
Still a lot of original stuff. I've got the original 808, the Lynn drum, Prophet 5, the OBA M6. Yeah, Mini Moog. Yeah.
Exactly. I like the sounds you can get from those. They're like different, unique, really. Yeah. Well, I was reaching up earlier. You mentioned earlier too. Do you remember this?
Oh yes, Telex,
Yeah,
great band,
Telex.
really. That's a great album.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it is.
yeah.
Very hard to find. I don't think there anything on CD, or if so, it's very hard to find. But
Mm.
have that anyway. So you guys did Call It a Day in '84.
Yeah.
Which direction? Where did you guys? What did you guys do after that?
The last session that we did was at Rockfield, and there's a guy that actually owned Rockfield, a guy called Kingsley, real character. He had a production company at the time. So when we split from RCA and split as a band, John and myself for a short period put a band together called Pleasure Company, and we got a production deal back at Rockfield. So we went in, and with Paul Cobalt, our last producer, we went in and did 3 tracks with him. So they signed us and they signed another band, and the other band was Tapau.
Okay.
And we were in at the same time doing sessions, and the guitarist from Tapau actually plays guitar on some of the tracks on the demos that we did there, and they were the first ones out the gate, and well, the rest was history for them. I think they just got that initial massive success from the first single, and it didn't really kind of work out for us. We were kind of left on the shelf, so we did a few gigs. It kind of didn't really kind of work out that much, really. So that was the kind of end of that. Eric formed a band called Strange Lands, I believe, and he ended up going on tour as the support act for Aha. So he did the arena tour with Aha. That was at the height of their career. So he did that, and I think John went on and did a couple of other kind of local band stuff. Nothing much to kind of speak of. I stayed in the music industry, so I stayed in London, just working in different studios and any kind of work I could get, whether it was kind of production, doing some demos, because I'd got into kind of doing small bits of production with Eric in the kind of during the Mood days, because we were kind of enjoying being in studios and playing with technology. So we often get asked to do different things. And there's a band called Vicious Pink, who used to be part of Soft Cell.
Oh, yeah.
So Brian and Josie, they were good kind of friends of ours. And Eric himself, we produced a session for them in London.
Yeah.
I think that's actually coming out in some release they're bringing out soon. There's a bunch of tracks that we produced, and one of them we wrote for them.
Can't you see? Yeah, Can't You See? And
that's right. Yeah. So we worked on that initial demo.
The really big dance club hit, and it was like B-side was 8:15 to Nowhere.
Right.
That was, and I used to play that one quite a bit.
Yeah.
That was always a crowd pleaser, always.
Yeah. And they did a version of Je T'aime.
Yeah.
If you remember. So if you remember the dance mix of that, the 12-inch version of it, that's me playing Simmons on that.
Oh, okay. I'll have to go back and listen to
that. So we kind of dabbled a little bit with that. So I just stayed in the industry and started doing the odd kind of production work, some writing for different people, and managed to stay doing that for about 10-15 years after the band split. So
okay. Well, backing up a little, John reformed the band, but you and Eric were not part of that in 92, 93, 92.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say he reformed it. he formed another band called Wild, that one day he decided to call them The Mood, and then went back to Wild again. So it wasn't really a reform of The Mood. It was They didn't last very long anyway. Yeah.
Well, when did you first hear about Cherry Red wanting to reissue the singles compilation?
I got a phone call from someone from Cherry Red who tracked me down.
Okay.
And I remember picking my mobile up, and there was this person saying, "Is that Mark James?" I thought, well, no one's called me that for a very long time, not since the days of The Mood. And then they said, "Did you used to be in The Mood?" And then said that obviously they're wanting to do this singles collection, and would we like to work with them on it to do the kind of sleeve notes and add some information in there. So yeah, that's how it came about. So it was a really nice surprise, for
Yeah,
sure.
I was going to ask you, you were a little bit surprised about.
Yeah, totally. Because it, I got off and done other things, and I started to get into building businesses and kind of grown up stuff, things that paid the mortgage. Um, and I'd almost forgotten about the mood. Really, it was something that happened in the past. I was kind of vaguely aware of every now and again that people would bump into someone and they would reminisce and stuff, and you know, I would be somewhere, either be here or somewhere else, you know, London or America or whatever, and you get talking to someone and say, "Oh, you used to be in this band," and it's called The Mood, and then the light would go on and they'd go, "Wow, it's amazing." So I was very amazed that people would remember the band. So yeah, it was almost like something that happened a lifetime ago to somebody else.
Uh-huh.
When the Cherry Red thing came about, it kind of, it woke up all those kind of memories and stuff. And then when we started doing a little bit of digging with the internet, we realized there was this whole world that had evolved on the internet about the band, and there was a massive amount of stuff out there. You know, on YouTube, just the amount of stuff it's on there is crazy. It's, you know, and all the comments and things, and fantastic to read. But and you know, and you got things like the video of Passion Dark Rooms. I think at the moment it's like 149,000 views or something. It's just, yeah, crazy.
Incredible. You know, like you said, with the advent of the internet,
Mm.
people, you know, older and younger people are, discovering and rediscovering, you know, this music from bygone eras. And,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, and it's, you know, to you, the musicians, it's got to be, a good thing, you know, I think.
yeah. It's I mean, it's humbling. It's very great to see and get to chat to people on it. It's yeah, it never ceases to amaze me how people know or have heard about the band at some point. And you know, I was very lucky in the old days to meet some wonderful, you know, heroes of mine at the time. You know, people like Bowie and stuff like that. Yeah, the good fortune to be able to sit and have a decent chat with. And then years and years later, in the kind of technology sector where I am now in my business, I've been very kind of very grateful to be able to meet people like Steve Wozniak, for example, from Apple.
Yeah.
To find out that Steve knew who I was from the band, you know. So it's and end up having a great conversation about music because of that common denominator. That you know, so it, yeah, totally always amazes me.
Right. Well, yeah, well, you know, this is what I always say, and good music is going to travel through time, and it's there, you know, it's recorded, you know, so people
Yep.
are going to discover it and find out about it. You know, even the younger audience today.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you still get some emails and posts on your Facebook from fans?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, it's it really is. It's which is why, you know, we've been thinking about doing this anniversary album, and it was Steve Levine that actually approached me about it, and he was working on one for Culture Club, and he was kind of seeing the momentum that was growing with the mood online. So he came with the idea of doing that. So yeah, that's why we're kind of, you know, moving forward with it. So that's going to be good, because not only doing something new with the material and I kind of mixing it in a kind of where we can bring out the sonics of it a little bit better with kind of modern mixing techniques. You'll be able to hear some of the things that you couldn't hear before in the old mixes. So I'm looking forward to that. But also, the Moods catalog has never been on any download sites. So it's not on iTunes or Spotify or anything like that. RCA never chose to do that. So that'll all be going up onto streaming sites, and so and digital downloads and stuff like that. So it'll all be available shortly. So that's exciting, and you know, and like hopefully that'll, you know, kind of feed that momentum that's been going on it. And it's been great to revisit all the old tracks as well, which I've been doing quite recently. In fact, up on my machine at the moment, I've just been looking at. Let's see, I'll rewind it. You'll recognize this.
Okay.
So it's nice to isolate everything down. There you go. So yeah, don't stop for you. Isolate all the time.
Well,
Yeah.
I think the original production was done really well. It's really clear separation and that kind of thing. But I think what you're talking about with the newer mixes and that kind of thing, really, I think that's just going to really enhance it.
Yeah, totally on it. I mean, I've heard kind of what some people have done before and what Steve's done with new mixes of some of his other bands, and it's amazing. You know, there's the clarity you can get now on it, and again, looking at all the old multi-tracks, then there's some stuff that we chose not to put into the actual mixes that came out. So there's some bits and pieces on there which are really nice, and there's a lot of tracks. There's a lot of stuff that's never been heard on it. So I think we must have, gosh, about 20 odd tracks or something, 20, 30 tracks of new material. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I for one,
Old material, but never heard and really heard on it.
well, I for one will be awaiting that when that happens.
Yeah.
Well, I like to be all encompassing, kind of. I don't like to have huge epic interviews, but I do like to start from the beginning and get current. Talk a little bit about Sugarstar, how it started and everything.
Well, that bit of information needs to be updated because Sugarstar is no longer. So that was something that I put together a number of years ago. As you said, it was a sync rights company that worked with musicians to put their music into games, videos, films, TV. So we did that for a short period. It went kind of really well, but then other opportunities came along, and I ended up kind of sidelining that and then just kind of killing it off after a while. And then I built an ISP company, which the internet service provider for businesses, and that's the kind of the main thing I've been doing for the past 20 years.
It's been that long, huh? Does it seem like that long, or not really?
Sometimes it does.
Sometimes it does.
So it's nice to it's nice to dabble with music, and I've never really kind of given music up. I've always had a little kind of writing room I collect analog synthesizers. That's my kind of passion, really. So I've always kept a hand in on that side of it, and every now and again I get kind of roped into doing something or other on it, which is quite nice. And I've been working with a really dear friend of mine, a guy called Wolfgang Fleur from Kraftwerk.
Yeah.
So I've just done a collaboration with him. So it'll be a track that I'll be bringing out with myself, kind of featuring Wolfgang. So.
Well, that will be interesting. Are you guys working from your own separate studios, home studios, or did you get together in a same location?
Predominantly different studios, yes, but we have got together on it.
Okay.
So
that's a nice thing these days. People are able to do that from their own, houses and bedrooms and whatnot. Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially during the lockdown. I know that was a really prime time for people, composing and writing. Mm-hmm. I mean, what else could you do, right?
That's it, totally.
We're kind of forced into that, but then it hurt the live performances, playing live.
But
it was good for the writing, and all that stuff. So, okay. Well, that's good. Some other things to look forward to. Who else have you collaborated with or worked with, either recently or over the years?
A great artist called Anton Witter.
Okay.
So he's a kind of solo synth artist, and I've known Anton for many, many, many years. And in fact, he was one of my early production credits that I did with him long, long time ago. So it would have been kind of like late 80s, early 90s. I was working with him. And then we got back together again a few years ago, just to do a couple little things, and we brought out under different kind of titles. So in fact, it's on iTunes, called The Groove Twins, and there's 4-track EP that's there, that's just together with Anton and myself, we collaborated on. And then we did a track which you can get on YouTube under the title of Glitter Ball. So that was kind of one-off track collaboration we did. And he's just done some really good solo albums, a really nice instrumental album he's got at the moment, you'll get on Bandcamp. So he's a really talented guy. And we'll be doing some more stuff together as well. So he kind of does his own kind of project, and every now and again we'll get together and do the odd bits and pieces.
Okay. All right. Well, what's on the immediate horizon for Mark Fordyce?
Well, finishing this documentation of the tracks. So we'll, as I say, everything was digitized recently. I'm just cataloging it now so we can kind of get all the track names labeled properly, and they'll all go across to Steve. I'm at Steve's studio first week of next month. So we'll sit down and then we work out a game plan of kind of, what it's going to entail, how we're going to do it. And I'll be updating stuff and putting that out on the internet about kind of what we're doing, and kind of timelines and stuff like that on it. And then I'm also working on a kind of a solo project. So I'll be working towards, it'll probably be an EP to begin with, and then it'll be an album coming out of my kind of solo stuff with a few collaborations on it, one of them being Wolfgang from Kraftwerk. And some other people that I'm looking at collaborating with as well. So some other well-known names, but I can't say anything more at the moment.
Oh, I understand. Yep. Right.
But it kind of icons from that era, right? It's I still keep in contact with a lot of people, so it's like you kind of have those conversations, and so I'll be kind of moving towards getting those done.
Okay, well that sounds like fun too, and keeps you off the streets, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Hence why everything's set up. That's
right. Okay. Well, Mark, I do appreciate your time, and for visiting with me and for sharing.
Yeah.
It's been nice.
Thanks for getting some of the old grey matter working.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. I have to do that myself too. That's what helps me with these interviews. Is keeps me thinking. So yeah, and they're rewarding. You mentioned earlier about comments that you get, Facebook and whatnot. Just the comments and the response. It is a very nice thing.
Yeah. And you said you DJ'd, but do you play an instrument?
No. I didn't have the dedication, the commitment to it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I never. I guess my mind's always in different directions going, like that. So couldn't focus on that. But I have the ear for it. As long as I can still hear, until I have to start wearing hearing aids. But I've always had I think a good ear for good music. So appreciate that, and what you guys go through. I think I can kind of go there myself. At least relate to it.
Well, that's what music's about, isn't it? If it can kind of take you on your own journey, that's
right.
It's done its job.
Right. I agree with that 100%. All right, Mark. Well, again, I will let you know as soon as I get this edited down. I don't think there's going to be a lot to edit, actually. So I'll send you over the link, and you can post it, to your social media.
Thank you very much. Well, it's lovely to meet you, and thanks for getting in touch. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it too. And you, all the best to you. All right.
And you. Thank you very much.
All right.
You take care.
We'll be in touch, Mark. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.